B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach, Shiur Torah. We have, Baruch Hashem, 2 Parashot this week.
What's the end of that sentence?
Which
B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach?
B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. That's the part that counts right now.
Okay.
So this week we have 2 Parashot, and we have Parashat Behar, which is in the mountain, on the mountain, and we have Parashat Bechukotai, which is, in essence, my decrees, Hashem's decrees, Hashem's commandments.
There you go.
Now, for anyone who knows these 2 parashot, especially Parashat Bechukotai, even if you want to be sugarcoating things, and you want to do, which by the way is not allowed, based on the Gemara, someone that uses euphemisms, that minimizes the decrees to from what they really are, has a very, very heavy punishment. So anyone that does it is making a very big mistake. But the point I'm trying to make here is that even if that person that doesn't know that rule tries to minimize and sugarcoat Parashat Bechukotai, especially, still can't. Because Parashat Bechukotai is one of 2 parashot in the Torah. The other one is in Sefer in Deuteronomy. And that has plain Hebrew blessings and curses from Hashem. There's no other way to translate it. There's no other way to understand it. It's a simple meaning. It's harsh enough where some people in the Knesset, you'll notice it this weekend, and some people in the Knesset, actually they made a minhag already at this point, where they used to get the aliyot. You go up to the Torah, and you get the aliyot, and they would actually, no one would want the aliyah for Parashat Bechukotai because they would be scared to get the curses. So now what they do, the minhag now, is that they actually have just the chazan, whoever is the Baal Kohet, the one that's reading Torah, he's the only one that's actually reading. There's no aliyah, there's no additional person.
So the chazan is not worried?
No, the chazan, because the thing is, logically, the way it works is that if someone comes up during the section, there is a 13 verses, the first 13 verses of blessings. Hashem giving us blessings. If you do what I want, these are the great things you're going to get, and they're all minimized to what they really are, because to give the details is beyond our understanding. And then there are 30 verses of curses and punishments of what a person will get if he doesn't keep Hashem's laws. So a lot more than the blessings. There's a reason for that, which we'll go over shortly.
Same aliyah?
No, different aliyah. But the key is that in the old days, they used to have someone that goes up for a different aliyot, and that would be someone that would go up for the curses. And actually one of the parts in the Gemara says that during the curses of this specific parasha, you're not allowed to stop. Meaning that there's no 2 aliyot that gets the curses. It's only 1 aliyah. So one person goes up, and he reads all of these curses. So when someone used to go up, they would be scared that they would be the ones that are saying these curses. Maybe they're the ones that are going to get cursed like this.
So now that's why the
so
chazan
what
says
ended up happening is that no one wanted the aliyah. Everyone was too scared. So they said, okay, the chazan is just going to read it out loud. And of course, he's not cursing himself because he's reading it out loud for everybody. So that's the logic behind it. Generally, it's even though it's a minhag, and it's an acceptable minhag by the big chachamim, much greater than we could even imagine. It's not necessarily so, meaning that every verse in the Torah, whether it's a verse describing the children of Esav, or the children of Yaakov Avinu, or the fact that Moshe said something to Am Yisrael, or it's a curse, every one of those verses in the Torah, every one of those letters in the Torah carries the same exact weight. There's no bigger or smaller verse in the Torah. There's no more important or less important verse in the Torah. So this is just, to show us that our understanding of things, our fear of things, has not changed regardless of how many generations we've been in the world. Yeah.
Chutz mizeh, Ribono Shel Olam didn't bring us the Torah to give us bad. It's not like reading the curses will influence us badly. If anything, it should actually influence us well.
Exactly, that's the point of it. So the key here is, in short, is that why did Hashem give us only 13 verses of blessings and 30 verses of curses. The reason is because the blessings that Hashem can really give us are so significant that our human mind can't even comprehend them. And that's why in the Gemara, in the Sfarim HaKadoshim, the holy books, there's very little description about Olam Haba. Very little. There's very little that we actually know about Olam Haba, which is Gan Eden and all the amazing things that we'll eventually get if we follow Hashem's Torah. There's very little description about what actually happens over there. But Gehenom, we know a lot. We know a lot about it. There's been people that have seen it. Moshe Rabbeinu is one of them that has seen it. Rabbi Yochanan saw it, and several other major sages in the Torah have seen it, and we've talked about it in previous lectures to a small extent. There's a lot of information about Gehenom and the punishments that we get. Why? Because technically, that is something that we can understand. We can understand suffering. We can understand the type of pain to some extent, with our human mind. It's not the same extent as what it really is, but again, people, when you live in this world, everyone knows what pain and suffering is. But not necessarily everybody knows what happiness is. So, the key is that Hashem wanted to show us that the blessings are obviously very important. You want to know that if you do everything that I tell you, there are a huge amount of blessings that will come to you beyond what you could even give to yourself. The curses, they're much more significant, not because Hashem is trying to show us that there's a lot of bad coming, but because He knows that the only way that people will do something is if they know that there's something to lose here, or something to gain. So generally with our human mind, with the Am Kshe Oref, the stubborn nation that we are, we generally don't respond to, if I told you, listen, come to the shiur on time, and if you come to the shiur on time, I'll give you $100. Okay, great. You're not necessarily, some people will come, some people won't come, but it has probably not much to do with the $100. Either if you could show up if you could show up on time, you'll show up on time. If not, you're not. But if I told you, if you don't show up on time, I'm deducting $10,000 or even $100 from your account. I'm deducting $100 from your account. You give me the right. You sign a document. I'm deducting $100 from your account for not showing up on time. I bet anything that everyone shows up on time. Why? Because not necessarily because they want to gain the 100. It's because they don't want to lose the 100. So the same concept with this, that Hashem is teaching us the Torah the way He knows that it needs to be taught. Obviously, He's the Creator. He put this world together. He put the Torah together. He obviously knows better than us. So He knows that for us to truly realize how important the mitzvot are, how important the rules that He put in this world are, He knows that He needs to explain to us that there is a consequence for all of our actions if we don't follow it. Because if we didn't know there's any consequences, there would be no Torah. If Hashem said, listen, if you do everything that I say, you win. If you don't, you break even. No one, not one person, including Moshe Rabbeinu, including anyone, would ever do even one mitzvah. That's just human nature. That's the way Hashem created us. It's not necessarily that makes me or you or anybody out there bad. That's just the way the Creator knows what He created. We generally do not act based on gain. We act based on fear. And that's with anything in life. People go to work and overwork, not because of necessarily they're just purely because of greed. It's because they're scared if they're not at the top, if they're not wealthy in comparison to who they're comparing themselves to, if they're not paying their bills on time. People are scared of poverty. And people are scared of not just poverty of obviously being homeless, but poverty in a sense of their own visual, of their own understanding of what poverty is. Poverty in America, by the way, guys, is very, very different than poverty in the rest of the world. I'm sure you know. To us, poverty is someone that's barely making it month to month. In the real world, which is the rest of the world, poverty is people that literally eat, once every 3 or 4 days, if that much. So, it's all based on our own perspective. So people here are always concerned with not being above the what they consider par. What they consider the level that they need to be in, and that's why they end up working too hard and spending so much time on it. All right, we'll go over some of the stuff later on, but we'll start off with Parashat Behar and Parashat Bechukotai. In America, they're both read in the same week, whereas in Israel, it's only Parashat Behar. So there's actually something very interesting about the two. There's a nice chidush. Now, Parashat Behar means in the mountain. Okay? And Bechukotai means my decrees, my laws, my commandments. So, the way that they come up with the names of the parashot is it's one of the words usually within the first sentence of the parasha. So, for example, Parashat Behar, it's Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe Behar Sinai le'emor. So it's talking about not only about a mountain, it's talking about Har Sinai. It's talking about Mount Sinai. So there's a nice chidush about why is it that they paired these two parashot instead of, let's say, Parashat Emor and Parashat Behar, or Parashat Bechukotai and the next one, let's say Parashat Bamidbar, or something else. Why is it that they connected these two specific parashot? Is because if you look at the world today, and really this is since the beginning of creation, who are the people that usually do not follow Hashem's laws? Okay, there are either, as we've talked about it in the past, it's either because someone doesn't know, or someone doesn't believe. That's generally the core foundation reason of why somebody doesn't do something. They don't know or they don't believe. Not caring, which is a small, minute chance of it, is very, very rare, because if someone truly knew the consequences of their actions, they would have to literally be insane to not do. So saying, listen, I don't care, but then, you ask the guy, by the way, can you describe to me what Rabbi Yochanan saw, what Eliyahu Navi showed Rabbi Yochanan in the Gehenom when he asked him to show him? Can you describe? No, I don't know what he saw. Oh, so if I describe it to you, would you listen? Yes. And you describe it to them, and, usually by the time you finish talking about it for about 6 or 7 minutes, people start crying. It's very, very scary. We're not going to talk about it today, but the point I'm trying to make here is that people don't really know the consequence of their actions. So the two foundational reasons of why people don't do is because they don't know or they don't believe. But a lot of the people that don't know or don't believe have a common problem. The common problem is that they have their own logic that they're using, and to argue the point, to argue with Hashem, to say, nah, you know what? This Shabbat stuff, yeah, maybe it was relevant 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. They didn't have cars back then. Mm-hmm. So, of course, it's not relevant to today. This kosher stuff, listen, back then they were scared about kosher because back then it was very difficult to find healthy animals. There was a lot of diseases. So today, with the kosher, listen, all of the animals are healthy, all of the animals have this, have that, and you can make a logical, rational argument for anything. I know this because I did this for most of my life. So, the key with all of those people is that they use their own logic. Now, when you see, if I'm using my logic against one of you, or someone else, to argue a point, that's okay. We're two human beings, we're equal, fine. But when you're using your logic against Hashem, if you really realize what Hashem is, even a small microcosm of what He is, it doesn't make any sense at all. So obviously the person that realizes what's happening here realizes the only reason why there's an argument here, the only reason why someone is even debating anything with Hashem's Torah is because of pride. It's because they want to be right. They feel that they're right. They feel that they're smart. They feel that everything that they have is within their own power, their own hands. They made the money. They found the woman. They did whatever they did in their life is within their own power. They did it. So they're entitled to some type of reward. They're entitled to a certain type of life. So this pride is generally the source of all problems for Jews, and really generally mankind, that does not want to follow the basic rules. Obviously Jews have more rules than any other nation, but the point is still the same. So, going back to the names of the parashot, when someone is not following the laws, which is Bechukotai, why is it? Because they feel like they're higher than a regular person, meaning that they're on a mountain, they're on a Behar, they're on the top of a mountain. So anyone that's on top of a mountain, obviously is not going to do what the Torah says. He's not going to follow the laws. He's not going to follow Bechukotai. And the main message that Hashem is giving us by saying Bechukotai is that He's talking about learning Torah. That is the core foundation of Bechukotai. Why learning Torah? Because He's saying that if you're going to learn Torah, it's only a matter of time before you actually follow what it says, You'll learn what it says, you'll follow what it says, and you get closer to me. If you don't learn Torah, even if you're keeping something right now, even if you're keeping Shabbat now, even if you're keeping kosher now, even if you're doing whatever you're doing right now because of either peer pressure or it's convenience or it's just that only thing that you know, it's only a matter of time before you fall down. It's only a matter of time before you stop. It's only a matter of time before Hashem's laws become inconvenient for you. So there goes the problem. So when someone has no Torah, it's only a matter of time before they fail. And usually the people that are not following Hashem's laws are people that have pride issues. The interesting part to summarize this specific point, and then we'll move on, is that if someone, Hashem always says in the Torah, let them leave me, but not my Torah. And when you think about this, it sounds kind of crazy. It sounds, what do you mean, let them leave me, not the Torah? Leave Hashem and not His Torah? How could that be? Because Hashem, obviously, the Creator, knows His creation. And He says, listen, someone that believes me can one day say he believes me, one day says he doesn't believe me. There's millions of people in the world that says I'm religious in my heart. I believe in God, I kiss the mezuzah, I kiss the Sefer Torah every time I come to Beit Knesset on holidays. I eat kosher whenever I go to a bar mitzvah. I did tefillin when I was 13. I'm religious in my heart. Obviously, based on these laws we're going to go over, it's not considered religious. So, when it comes down to loving Hashem, great, it's nice, but love is based on action. And Hashem is saying, listen, if you love me, you're going to do what I say. Not if you love me, you're just going to say, okay, I know who he is, and that's really it. That's not love. It's like saying a husband says, I love my wife, but he keeps cheating on her. That's not love. Okay? So that point is established. So Hashem says, me they could leave. But if they have my Torah, then they know their way home. Mm-hmm. They could debate whether I exist or not. Let's say someone is debating, someone doesn't want to believe that Hashem exists. Chas v'chalila. But they continue to learn Torah. Through the learning of the Torah, eventually, it's only a matter of time where they will find Hashem again. They will find their faith and believe in Hashem again. And then they have both anyway. So Hashem says, leave me and not my Torah, not because He wants us to leave Him, but because He knows that at least if they still have the Torah,
where it says
then they're going to come back. This is in the Torah. This is in the Torah. Yes, it's one of the pasuk.
Leave me and not my Torah.
Okay, I'll show it to you after Shiur. I don't want to spend too much time going over the pages, but I'll show it to you after the Shiur.
Okay.
So, anyway, so now Hashem is telling us, if you have pride, there's no way you're going to learn my Torah. But the funny thing is, if you learn my Torah, if you follow my laws, you do Bechukotai, you'll also learn that the Behar that we're talking about, the mountain that we're talking about, is Mount Sinai. And why was Mount Sinai the one chosen out of all the mountains? Because Mount Sinai was the humble mountain. It was the smallest mountain. It was the lowest mountain. It wasn't the biggest mountain. Hashem was teaching us, even through the choice of picking Mount Sinai, He was teaching us something. Be humble. So the funny thing is that if you actually, any way you go about it, if you do the laws, one way or another, you'll conquer your Yetzirah, you'll conquer your pride, and eventually you'll get closer and closer to Hashem.
Amen.
So now the next thing is that the Parashot talks about in Parashat Behar is actually talking about the Shemitah. Now the Shemitah is very, very interesting proof that the Torah is not a novel that Mark Twain wrote or some other guy. The Shanat Shemitah is pretty much, it's just like we have 6 days a week that we're allowed to work, and the 7th day is Shabbat. There's also 6 years that we're allowed to work. This pertains to farmers. And the 7th year, we're not. Now, on a logical perspective, this doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, 6 days a week, not working on the 7th, that's fine. That's only 1 day a week. But to say to a farmer that on the 7th year, you're not allowed to sell any of your merchandise. You're not allowed to do anything to your field. You have to treat it as if it's not your field. Because in reality, it's not really your field, it's Hashem's.
For a year.
For a year, for a whole year. So what happens to all the stuff that's there, that's not being used, goes bad. So whoever comes and picks it and takes the fruits or whatever you have in there, obviously it gets eaten. But in general, you're losing a ton of money by not doing it. So Hashem actually has a very, very interesting promise here that pertains to today, and we see it still happening today, which will tie to a very good story that I just heard recently. So he's telling us here in so many words that if you do this, if you follow my Shemitah laws, on the 6th year, I will give you enough for 3 years. I will give you enough from your field to last you for 3 years, meaning for the 6th year, for the 7th year, and for the 8th year until your fruits that you're going to replant and everything else grows again. So in essence, you'll end up benefiting by doing this. Now, if this was a man-made book, no one in their right mind would make such a promise. Right? No one would say, listen, if you don't work for a whole year, Hashem is already going to is promising you ahead of time that you're going to get more than enough by the 6th year that you have nothing to worry about. Because at some point, if this was a man-made book, it will be proven wrong. Now, there are still some people in the world that keep this, and especially in Israel, you see this miracle every 7 years or every 6 years. You see these people that keep it, and it's something extraordinary. There's actually a story about this recent war we had with the Arabs. There's a farmer that was a very, very righteous person, and right before the last day came to not being allowed to work on the field, they tried to harvest everything and take everything they can. Not only did Hashem give him more than enough, but through the harvesting, he also found something very interesting. He found the tunnels for the terrorists that were planning to attack. The tunnels that they've dug underground were found as a result of following Hashem's laws and Hashem's decrees of the Shemitah. So people that didn't follow it, obviously, don't have such stories, but it is one of the main things that Hashem promises us is a huge amount of reward, protection, and good things from it. And this guy not only got monetary reward, but he also helped the entire nation, because had it been that he didn't find it, the damage that we would have gotten from Chas v'Chalila, from all those terrorists, would have been extraordinary. I mean, hundreds or thousands of lives would have been
during the
hurt.
during the holidays.
Yeah. So this is also a eternal promise from Hashem, and another interesting verse in this parasha. It says, if he's waiting by the window, you could just go, because he'll bark eventually. No worries.
Here.
Another interesting part about this Parashat Behar we're still focusing on, is Hashem is telling us something that for anyone who's not necessarily sure what is written in the Torah or not, because not everyone has read the Torah from beginning to end, or understood it. Even some people that have read it not necessarily understand the whole thing. But this is a very, very literal verse, and it's talking about the Shemitah still. And it says, "V'asitem et Bechukotai," and you perform my decrees, "Ve'et mishpatai," and you observe my ordinances, "Tishmeru v'asitem otam v'yashavtem al haaretz lebetach." So you shall perform my decrees, observe my ordinances, and perform them. So all, perform my decrees means learn Torah. Learn the Torah, learn all the mitzvot, and do them. That's what, in essence, what this means. And then if you do all of this, then you shall dwell securely in the land. Meaning that if you do all of what I say, you have nothing to worry about. You'll have no enemies, you have no problems, no one's going to attack you, you don't need a big army, you don't need to spend $100 million a day on special equipment to fight the 4,000 missiles that the Arabs are shooting at us. You don't need to do any of that stuff. Hashem will protect us. But another thing we're also learning from this particular verse is that if we don't do it, there are consequences. And the main consequence of not following the Shnat Shemitah is losing control of our country. Losing control of Eretz Yisrael to war, fear, and so on, which is something that you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out. We have on a day-to-day basis. So it's interesting that this is already written 3,300 years ago.
What is it when they sell the land to a non-Jew?
Mm-hmm.
Not legit?
Yeah, I mean, there's a shtar iska. They could sell the land to someone, but again, they still can't benefit from the land during that 7th year.
So who benefits?
The goy.
More permits.
The goy. Next thing is,
But you can sell it and like enjoy the money you sell it, but you cannot enjoy the tvuah.
yeah, what happens is that you sell it based on how long you have, how long you're giving it to him for. What he's going to have a benefit. You
Like
have
you
no
rent
benefit
it, you
whatsoever.
rent
In
it.
essence, yes. In essence.
So this possible?
Yeah, in essence, yes. So now, the next thing that it talks about, we're going to try to move a little faster because a lot of things is 2 parashot, but there's another thing also. I'm sure all of you have heard the whole issue with interest on loans. Now, a Jew is not allowed to charge another Jew interest on loans. So here, this is actually in this parashat twice. Et kaspecha lo titen lo beneshech umarbit lo titen achlecha. Okay, that's the first time. And the second time, let me see, this is the. Oh, actually, so I'll tell you in English actually first.
No loan shark.
If you're, this is actually first talking about how if there's any time there's someone that's poor, or someone that's having financial troubles, it's a Jew's obligation to help that person before they get to the poverty line, before they get to a point where they're really in dire straits. So it says if your brother becomes impoverished and his means falter in your proximity, meaning if someone that's around you is in trouble, you shall strengthen him. Proselyte or resident, meaning whether they're a convert or they're a natural born Jew, it doesn't matter. You have to help them so that he can live with you, even if you have to bring him into your own home. Do not take from him interest and increase. So this is the first time he's telling you don't lend him money and charge him interest. Just to give you guys a basic idea, we're not going to go over it for too much, but someone who charged a kosher Jew, again, there's a specific type of Jew, a kosher Jew that keeps the Torah and mitzvot, charged them interest, will have to come back in a gigul. Even if they're a completely righteous person, even if they did all of the mitzvot, they kept Shabbat and everything else, they charge one person interest, even if it's $1. They have to come back in a gigul. So it's a very, very dangerous sin. So it says, do not take from him interest and increase, and you shall fear your God, and let your brother live with you. So always, every time I told you guys last week, every time Hashem gives us a mitzvah, a commandment, He always reminds us that He's God, because any time that we have a situation that we need to do something, keep Shabbat, kosher, business deal, anything like that, if we're thinking that there's a boss upstairs, we're less likely to violate the laws. And that's why it's also very highly recommended that if you do business, it actually in this parasha it talks about how you're supposed to favor doing business with other Jews versus non-Jews. But if you have a choice of 2 Jews, then a Jew that's obviously a kosher Jew is always better than a Jew that's not keeping mitzvot. Even to the point of, even if it costs you up to 16% more to buy from the Shomer Shabbat, you still have to buy from him. Up to 16%. So even if he's more expensive, you still have to go with him, but up to a limit. So, the next one it says again, do not give him your money for interest, and do not give him your food for increase. I am Hashem your God. It says, אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים לתת לכם את ארץ כנען להיות לכם לאלוהים. Oh, actually, I read this already. אל תיקח מאיתו נשק ותרבית, ויראת מאלוהיך וחי אחיך עמך. את כספך לא תיתן, לא בנשך ומרבית לא תיתן אכלך. So it mentions it twice, the same thing. It's one verse after another talking to us about the same thing. Telling us, do not charge your brother interest. Why? Chazal has explained to us, why does it mention the same thing twice? Why does it mention, don't charge him interest twice? Because we constantly hear that there's not even one letter that's wasted in the Torah. So why is Hashem mentioning it twice? Is because He's telling us that this is such a big sin, it's 2 sins. It's not just 1 cent. It's not like a regular thing. It's 2 cents to charge someone interest on a loan. So now there is an exception to the rule. It is a very
בנק זה בסדר?
No.
meaning if the bank is lending you money on interest,
כן.
if it's owned by Jews, no.
אז כאילו כביכול מי שהבעלים של הבנק זה חטא, מה שהוא עושה.
If it's owned by Jews and there's only Jews that own it, then yeah, it's a problem. That's why a lot of the righteous people, Baruch haba, a lot of the righteous people, especially in Israel, they do not take loans. No mortgages, no nothing.
Religion.
If they don't have money, yeah, religious people. If they don't have the money to buy something 100%, they don't take loans.
Because like that you make 200%.
Yeah, like I know, for example, my cousin, Ephraim Kachlon, Rabbi Ephraim Kachlon, he refuses to take any loans whatsoever. No, from a bank, from anything. He could buy a house, he could do whatever he wants. I mean, it's not, refuses to do it, not because he doesn't want the, whatever,
But if you go to...
it's because he doesn't want to cause anyone else to
But
sin.
if the bank not owned by Jew, you can take a loan?
Well, most of them owned by Jews.
If it's not owned by Jews.
If it's not owned by Jew.
Yeah, if it's not owned by Jews.
Why? You have banks in Israel, it's...
Yesh v'yesh. But something more interesting,
Yes,
something more interesting is that there is an exception to the rule about charging interest to a Jew. This is an exception that people don't like to hear about. Baruch Hashem, everyone here is a Shomer Shabbat, so it's not going to be a problem. But this is one of those things that gives people a real perspective of who they are in the eyes of God when they don't keep his decrees. You're not allowed to charge a Jew interest, and if you charge him interest, you come back in a Gilgul. But if that Jew is a Mechalel Shabbat, you have to charge him interest. You charge him interest, no problem.
If he doesn't Shomer Shabbat.
If he's not a Shomer Shabbat, you charge him interest, no problem. You could even overcharge him if you want.
Wow.
He's considered a goy in every way. A goy, you're allowed to charge interest. Someone is not Jewish, you're allowed to charge interest. Someone does not keep Shabbat is considered a goy in every way. In the Torah, in the Shulchan Aruch, it's showed
charge him interest.
in the Shulchan Aruch, it's written 7 times, describing that a Jew does not keep Shabbat is considered a goy in every way. So for any of those people that drive to shul on Shabbat, or don't keep Shabbat, or go to the beach on Shabbat, or do all of those things on Shabbat that Hashem told us not to do, and they think that they're still Jewish, this is one simple way, business way, to understand what a Jew really is and what a Jew really isn't in the eyes of God. When this is not a law that I made, no one asked me permission about this law. This is, but I know that this particular law makes people angry. But it's the truth. It's no rabbi in the world that's an Orthodox kosher rabbi will disagree with it because again, this comes from the Torah, not my mouth. But again, the only issue with such a person, as far as charging such a person interest, is if he does tshuva. Then you may have a problem. If you charged him interest and then he did tshuva,
We have to pay him back?
so
But what if a fellow Jew of a brother, he was Shomer Shabbat, and he asks you, it happened to me at work, oh, could you lend me this kind of money, could you lend me, and I give it to him, but he gives it back to me. But I don't charge him interest, of course,
okay.
but he gives it back, so it's
lending people money is a mitzvah.
Is a mitzvah? Okay.
No, lending people
הוא אומר
money.
לי, אתה כל הזמן מציל אותי. הוא אומר לי,
Lending people money is actually a big mitzvah, especially people that are Shomer Shabbat. Lending people money is a very, very big mitzvah. But
הוא אומר לי, אתה מציל אותי
again,
כל הזמן.
remember, lending people money to Shomer Shabbat is a mitzvah. Lending money to someone that's not Shomer Shabbat is not a mitzvah. So the key is that if you help somebody out and it's not a Shomer Shabbat, is try to convince him to keep Shabbat. Maybe it's part of the deal. I don't know. Try the most important job for a Jew to do.
Interest.
Don't charge him interest. If you keep Shabbat, I don't charge you interest.
But you have to invite him over to see if he does the whole Shabbat.
So this parasha, this first parasha, we're pretty much done with it. I mean, there's a lot of other details, but the next parasha is a lot more important, I think, as far as relevant to us, because none of us are farmers or as far as the Shemitah is concerned. But something that's very interesting in a lot of the parashot, that you guys need to definitely pay attention to is that at the end of this parasha, most of this parasha is talking about business issues, about the Shemitah, about don't steal. It's even worse to steal from a goy than it is to steal from a Jew. Why is it worse to steal from a goy than it is to steal from a Jew? Exactly. So,
Period. The
when
steal
you
is not good.
Steal is not good
It's
at
not
all,
good
of
at all.
course. But if you steal from a Jew, that Jew will look at the other Jew and they'll say, oh, okay, so that guy's bad. But if you steal from a goy, chas v'chalila, then the goy will say, the nation is
All the
bad.
Jews.
All the Jews are the bad. All the Jews are terrible.
We had the same
So
thing.
it creates chilul Hashem.
שעושים בחדשות הרב הזה, this rabbi, that rabbi. Then the Jews say, these rabbis. גם חילול השם.
100%.
לא משנה.
100%. So it's much, much worse. So it talks about the Shemitah, it talks about the business, it talks about our obligation. Again, this is not a mitzvah, this is a commandment. It's a little bit more important. Our obligation to help other Jews in need. If it's obviously within our means. I mean, if you don't have the means, if you're trying to survive yourself, obviously you can't help somebody. You can't help somebody. You have to always take yourself first. You have to save your own life first. But if you have the means and you see that there's a fellow Jew that's in need, you have to help them. A few things we're talking about converts, about how you have to make sure to help the converts. As you guys all know already, that converts we talked about this in other shiurim, that converts are very, very highly regarded in the eyes of Hashem. The converts, the widows, and the orphans are three types of people that Hashem considers them not only his children like the rest of the Jews, but to all of us, we're considered his sons, or the women are considered daughters. But the converts, the orphans, and the widows, he's considered the mom and the dad, because they don't have anybody else. And there are, I believe, 36 places in the Torah talking about the special protection that Hashem has on the converts, so much so that even pressuring a convert, pressuring like arguing with them to too much, and into something and pushing them into doing something, Hashem, just for that, Hashem says that He will take revenge on that person.
Wow.
Personally. He won't send a malach. He will take personal revenge on that person that goes against him. So,
Against the
with a
convert.
Jew, just so you know, another Jew, you're supposed to care for every Jew. You're supposed to get along with every Jew. But with a convert, you're obligated to love them. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant. You're obligated to love a convert. So it's very, very high. But going back to the point and finishing this first parasha, is that again, after all of those issues that we talked about, what is the last verse in this parasha? Et Bechukotai tishmoru umikdashai tirau umikdashi tirau ani Adonai. My Sabbaths shall you observe, and my sanctuary shall you revere. I am Hashem. So again, Hashem reminds us to keep Shabbat. How is keeping Shabbat relevant to this parasha? Better question is, how is Shabbat relevant almost to 48 times in the Torah? He's talking about Shabbat. I mean, it's constantly mentioned. Keep Shabbat, keep Shabbat. Don't have, sex crimes, keep Shabbat. What do you mean? Okay, we talked about this. How is Shabbat relevant to this? Don't have any stealing with your other people, keep Shabbat. What's going on here? Why does it keep mentioning Shabbat over and over and over again? And this is something that we need to understand when we have a Yetzer Hara to do something bad. We always have to understand who we're dealing with. Yetzer Hara is a very, very hard worker. Anyone that underestimates the Yetzer Hara is bound to lose to him. So you have to understand who you're dealing with in order to win. So Hashem is telling us that He knows the Yetzer Hara that He gave us, and He knows that we're going to have inclinations to violate certain laws that He gave us. There's certain things that are easy for us to do, like for example, to put a mezuzah. Very easy for us to do. Very easy. It's not to do brit milah. Very easy to do. Why? Because you don't even have a choice. Your parents decide for you. You're 8 days old. You're not going to say no. You're 8 days old. Now, by the time you figure out what a brit milah is, you're already too old. It doesn't bother you. It doesn't change anything in your life. There's certain mitzvot that have a lot of bracha, meaning that a lot of mazal. Everyone does them. But there's certain mitzvot, unfortunately, not a lot of people do them. And one of them happens to be the most important mitzvah of all, which is Shabbat. There is no Judaism without Shabbat. Even though technically Chazal tells us that the reward for each mitzvah is not told to us. We're known that there is a reward for every mitzvah, but what's more, what's less, we don't know. But we do know the level of importance of mitzvot based on the punishment of if we don't do them. We don't know them based on the reward that we're going to get. Understand? So we know that if we do, let's say, have a mezuzah, do tefillin, keep kosher, we know we're getting a reward for this. 100%. Keep Shabbat, we know we're going to get a reward for this. If we don't do it, we know that there's certain punishments for not doing it. We know that Shabbat is the most critical because the punishment for not keeping Shabbat is worse than anything else. Meaning that if someone does all of the mitzvot, every mitzvah, and does not keep Shabbat, he's wasting his time. He still has no share to the world to come. So that's something to really understand. That's the level of importance of Shabbat. Why did Hashem mention it so much? Because number one, He knows that we're going to have a very, very big evil inclination, very big Yetzirah to violate the Shabbat. And therefore, He's reminding us over and over again, Shabbat is the source. Shabbat is the foundation of Judaism. It's the foundation of my covenant with you. That's Shabbat. So it's important to know these things because again, if we use our own logic, a lot of this stuff does not necessarily make that much sense. But when we use Hashem's basic information over here, it makes a lot of sense. Last thing about the parasha that I actually forgot, but now I remember, Baruch Hashem, is that Hashem is telling us that if we keep the Shemitah, the law of Shemitah, not only will we have peace in the land, but the land will be very fruitful. The land will grow. If we don't keep the Shemitah, not only will we have enemies and wars and a lot of problems, but the land can vomit us, meaning that we can get thrown out of the land, which is actually what's happened to us for the last couple thousand years. And Hashem is specifically in this parasha.
They say now we don't need to keep the Shemitah because there is no Beit HaMikdash.
No, we need to keep the Shemitah 100%. Shemitah today, this year is Shemitah. We just passed Shemitah. It has nothing to. Yeah. We have to keep this.
Just if all Israel in Israel.
In Israel, yes. In Israel, you have to keep Shemitah.
Yeah, but just if all Israel in Israel, you need to keep Shemitah.
Whoever said that is wrong.
Or Beit HaMikdash, something like that.
Has nothing to do with Beit HaMikdash. Shemitah is purely a commandment between us and Hashem for the land itself. Someone that does not keep it is in big trouble. So now,
this is the farmers, you saying?
anyone that's growing trees, fruits, things like that. So now, there's something very interesting about Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, about the land of Israel, is not like any other land. It's not like America. It's not like any other part, any other continent, any other city, any other place in the world. How do we know it? We learn it from the Shemitah. The Shemitah itself is another proof that Hashem is in control of the entire world. He didn't just create the world. He's in control of the entire world. Because in this particular parasha, it also talks about that if you violate the rules, and you end up getting thrown out of the land, then what's going to end up happening is that the land will, in essence, take a break on its own. The break you didn't want to take, the Shemitah that you didn't want to do, you didn't want to follow, so now that you're out of the land's going to take a break, and it's going to have a permanent break until you come back. So Hashem, in this particular parasha, is giving us a prophecy forever that no country, no nation in the world will ever successfully grow anything in the land of Israel. Ever. So it's very easy to prove. Right? Because we have modern technology. Even a couple of hundred years ago, we still had journalism. Even a few thousand years ago, we had journalism. We have proofs. So there's someone by the name of Mark Twain. Mark Twain is a very, very famous novelist. He lived in the 1800s. He wrote books like Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, very, very famous guy. And he went to Israel in the year 1867. He went to the land of Israel. You heard a lot about Israel from the Bible. He wasn't Jewish. And, not to my knowledge at least.
No.
And he went to Israel.
Mark Twain.
He went to Israel. And he wrote in there's a book or some type of I guess some type of book or some type of writing that's called Innocent Abroad. Innocents Abroad. People, I guess, traveling abroad. And he writes and he describes the land of Israel. And he says the land, we barely saw people. And not only we barely saw people, it's a dead land. There's nothing here. We barely even saw any trees at all. There's no fruits whatsoever. Not even an olive tree or a cactus. It's growing in this dead land.
This is in 1867?
1867.
Before that.
This is before we came back to Israel, 1948.
Wow.
But we actually came back to Israel before that, which we'll go over in a second. So he's saying to us, he wrote us in a public document, you can look it up on the internet. He says, there's nothing here. I don't even know why anyone wants to live in this place, why anyone fights about this place. This is like, it's so strange that it's such a fertile land and has such an amazing history, but it seems as if there's a curse on this land. There's nothing here. Nothing here is death. Nothing. Not even. Why does he mention those two specific trees? Why does he mention an olive tree and a cactus? Because unlike all other trees, all other fruits, an olive tree can grow even on a rock. It can grow on anything. It doesn't need our help. Cactus could grow anywhere. Doesn't need any human planting and harvesting or anything like that. These things can grow anywhere. So he's saying that even the things that don't need human assistance don't grow here. There's nothing here.
But he was wrong.
No, he was right. There was nothing there.
He was right at that.
Which means that Hashem's decree,
I promise you.
Hashem's promise here in the Torah that the land will never grow anything ever is right. Because Am Yisrael wasn't in Eretz Yisrael at the time, and nothing grew. Something around 20 or 25 years later, there was a bunch of religious Jews, not the Zionists, that came many years later. There was a bunch of religious Jews from around the world, specifically from Yemen and other places,
1887.
that came to Israel and started buying land and started fixing the land and drying out all the swamps and making the land pretty much have Jews on it once again. And Hashem put back the blessing on it, and it started growing, and that's when the Zionists came on later on and took control. And 50 or so years later, got the United Nations to vote on an Israeli country. So, and obviously since then, anyone that looks at Israel, it's one of the most fertile. It is the most fertile land in the world, more than any other country in the world. It has extraordinary things in Israel, as far as fruits, vegetables, and all types of things there. So again, all those years, 2,000 years, we weren't in Israel, nothing grew. Nothing grew. And there's also documents much older than Mark Twain that talk about how land of Israel has absolutely nothing on it. And that's also why the Arabs didn't have any problem, or anyone that was there didn't have any problem giving it away and selling it. No one ever argued over Israel for 2,000 years. No one had any wars over Israel for 2,000 years. No one was doing any protests about Israel for 2,000 years. No one cared about Israel for 2,000 years. Why did they start caring about Israel? Because Israel became fertile again. Israel became the land of milk and honey again, like Hashem promised. But just like Hashem promised that if there's no Jews, there's nothing there, we see that. That's the bigger proof than the fact that it's very fertile now. That for 2,000 years it didn't grow even an olive tree. So this is pretty much sums up the Parashat Behar in a way where we understand how certain things that we could actually learn from Parashat Behar. So now, the next parasha is something that, like I said before, it's called Parashat Bechukotai. Bechukotai, even if someone wants to describe it in a nice way and sugarcoat it, it's very, very difficult to do so. Why? Because Hashem is telling us, this is the bottom line. This is the deal between you and me. This is the risk. This is the reward. So the parasha starts like this. This is one of my favorite quotes. Im bechukotai telechu, ve'et mitzvotai tishmeru, ve'asitem otam. If you will follow my decrees, and observe my commandments, and perform them. It's the first verse. So he's not telling you if you like it. He's not saying if you like my Torah. He's not saying if you believe in me. He's not saying if you believe in God. He's not saying if you're a nice guy or you're a nice woman. He's not saying any of those things. He's not saying if you're a very smart guy or if you're rich. He's not saying any of that stuff. He's saying specific right here. If you will follow my decrees, follow them. My decrees means learn Torah, by the way, just so you know. And observe them. Observe my commandments. Observe my commandments means that you're learning what needs to be done. And perform them means that you're actually doing what needs to be done. Then I will provide your rains in their time. What does it mean? Provide your rains and make rain happen at a specific time. What's the big deal? What if it's the wrong time? Just so you know, rain does not only have effect on farming, rain has effect on everything. All agriculture, all businesses, all life depends on rain. If the rain came at the wrong time, then it could lead to a huge amount of deaths, destruction, and pretty much the destruction of the world has happened already through rain. Obviously the Mabul. Too much, too little, wrong time, right time. Rain is something very, very critical. Anyone that wants to even, that has a doubt about God, just learn about rain. By the time you finish learning about rain, you realize how special and how many miracles have to happen in order for rain to happen at a specific time, and you realize there has to be a creator to the world. So he's telling us, I'll provide you rain in their time, and the land will give its produce, and the tree of the field will give its fruit. So you won't have any problems growing anything. Won't have any food problems, which, by the way, the food he's also talking about parnasah. Okay, because not all of us are farmers, and the Torah is relevant to everyone. So by fruit and the rain is also a symbol for parnasah. So it's pretty much telling us that if you do what I tell you, you learn Torah, you learn what you need to do, and you do what you need to do, you have nothing to worry about parnasah. Parnasah is from Shamayim, and this is one of the proofs. Okay. Another thing that he says is very interesting. I will provide peace in the land, and you will lie down with none to frighten you. I will cause wild beasts to withdraw from your land, and a sword will not cross your land. You will pursue your enemies, and they will fall before you by the sword. So now, he's telling us that if we do what Hashem says, if we do what Hashem says, we have nothing to worry about as far as war, destruction, terrorists, Arabs, Iranians. We have nothing to worry about any of those things. So instead of building one missile technology on top of another missile technology and more weapons and more soldiers and all of those things, if we just invest a little bit more in Torah, we have nothing to worry about. This is a promise from Hashem. It's a promise from the Creator of the world. He's saying that your enemies, they're never going to come to you, never going to bother with you. Just like we know about, for example, animals. Just so you know, animals see the world differently than we do. Generally, animals fear man. Whether it's a lion or a bear or anything else, they fear man. They do not fear man that looks to them like an animal. How do we know this? In Sefer Daniel, in the book of Daniel, there is a story of how they threw Daniel to a pit full of lions that they starved. And they starved them for a few days, and that was the punishment back then. It was for entertainment purposes and also cruelty and so on.
Wow.
And they threw him into the pit of lions, expecting the lions to eat him instantly. But Daniel was a major tzaddik. He was a prophet also, but he was someone who was very, very special. And not only did the lions not eat him, that for 3 days, 3 more days, they continue starving themselves. But didn't touch him. This everyone believes in, as far as anyone that believes in the Torah or the Tanakh believes it, whether it's the Christians or the Arabs or the Jews. We all believe in the Tanakh, even though they contradict it. But the point I'm trying to make is that everyone knows this story happened. So these lions refuse to touch Daniel, even though they are starving. So then one of the people that actually caused Daniel to fall into this pit tells the king, listen, maybe the lions are not hungry. So the king says, you know what? Maybe you're right. Take him out, and we'll throw you in. We'll see what happens. And what ended up happening is that when he threw him in, the lions ate them before he landed on the ground. His feet didn't even touch the ground, and his body was completely disintegrated. For nothing. Why? What do we learn from this? That when a lion sees someone that looks like a human being is not necessarily just a flesh and blood. A human being is a soul. A soul only looks like a human being when there's Torah in that soul. When there's Torah in the soul, then you look like a human being. When there's no Torah in that soul, then you look like another animal. Then you're just flesh. Flesh and blood is just like anything else. So when the animals see a human being with no Torah, they think that that person is an animal. And they eat animals. So you're never going to see a lion feeling bad about eating a giraffe or a zebra or anything else, because that's what they do. But if you see someone very righteous, they'll never have a problem with as far as fear of these types of animals. This is actually one of the promises we have in this particular parasha. When Hashem says, I will cause wild beasts to withdraw from the land. Another interesting thing that we learn is that Hashem says here, so in case we have enemies that try to attack us, in case we have, 5 of you will pursue 100, and 100 of you will pursue 10,000, and your enemies will fall before you by the sword. So in case someone is foolish enough to go against Am Yisrael, Hashem is saying, ורדפו מכם 500, ו100 מכם רבבה, ירדופו ונפלו אויביכם לפניכם לחרב. So he's telling you that each 5 of you can take on 100. But if each 100 can take on 10,000, if you do the math, you don't need to be a rocket scientist, if you do the math, 5 out of 100 is 20 to 1. 100 out of 10,000 is 100 to 1. So shouldn't it be 100 to 2,000? Be the same ratio? What Hashem is teaching us here is there's power in unity. When Am Yisrael is united, they can do a lot more. They have a lot more power. How can we understand this? If you take, let's say, a stick, like an ice cream stick, break it 1 stick, it breaks. You take 10, you can break them. You take 100, try for a week, you won't break it. Why? Because even though it's technically still the same stick, there's power in unity. This is also one of the principles behind a minyan. Why we go in power in a minyan? Because even though sometimes it's much easier, and I could speak for myself here a lot, sometimes it's much easier to have more kavanah when you're praying by yourself. It's easier sometimes, praying by yourself, you have more kavanah, no one's sneezing or yelling or screaming or talking or anything like that. You have more kavanah when you're by yourself. Hashem says, anyway, go to minyan. Why? Because when you pray by yourself, we judge every one of your prayers to see if you had kavanah. Every one of them. If you didn't have 100% kavanah, your prayer may not be accepted. But when you pray with a minyan, we take the best parts of everyone, and at the end there's 100% kavanah. Even if your kavanah was chalta, even your kavanah was nothing good, your prayer is still going to be considered great, as if you had 100% kavanah. So again, obviously, it's even better to be the one that prays even with kavanah in a minyan. It's not going to give us a permission to talk in a minyan, because that's a sin of its own. But you get my point. Next thing it talks about is something very... I've told you guys this before, but I like the story so much that I'll repeat it for anyone that didn't watch it on... any of you that doesn't know it, or anyone that's watching it will see it, because I think this is one of the best proofs that I know of, at least, about Hashem, not just Hashem himself, but obviously the Jewish Hashem, the only Hashem, and also how we see it within the Torah itself. So again, he's talking about now. This is the blessings. These are 13 verses that give us, or 10 verses actually, that give us blessings that he's going to give us. He will overcome our enemies. We'll have more than enough parnasah. We'll be fruitful. We'll multiply. A lot of really good things. And then he's telling us, משכני בתוככם ולא תגעל נפשי אתכם והתהלכתי בתוככם והייתי לכם לאלוהים ואתם תהיו לי לעם. So he's saying, my sanctuary among you, and my spirit will not reject you. So obviously he's going to be with us, but here he's saying something very interesting. And I will walk within you. I will be God unto you, and you will be a people unto me. The English translation of betochechem is very difficult, because it's very difficult to understand. You could say it's within, you could say it's among, but for betochechem means almost in essence inside you. So what does it mean, Hashem inside us? Many people look for proofs and miracles for Hashem, especially people that are far away, not eating kosher, not keeping any mitzvot, not doing anything.
I'm not believing so much.
It's very, very hard for them to connect to Hashem. It's very hard for them to connect to Hashem. Now when bad things happen, people either go against Hashem and revolt even more, or they start asking questions of what's the purpose of life, and maybe start going in the right direction of doing tshuva. But this may actually save people some time if they just listen to a couple of minutes scientific proof that is always good for us to remind ourselves of. Because anytime we have trouble, it's very easy to think that we're alone in the world. So this particular verse saying, V'it'alachti b'tochechem, where Hashem says, and I went within you, and I was a God unto you, Hashem is not only talking in a figurative way, he's talking in a physical way. In 1983, there was a scientist named Dr. Rubinstein who lived in Venezuela and did a aliyah to Israel to work in molecular biology. Molecular biology is a very interesting field. A lot of schooling, a lot of work, a lot of science. And in those days, we didn't have necessarily the same type of equipment and knowledge as we have today, so this is relatively breakthrough. Even today it's breakthrough what he did, but the point I'm trying to make is that at those times, it's even more so than what it would be today. So, Dr. Rubinstein was looking into DNA. He wanted to see details about the DNA, because the DNA is the foundation. The foundation of every creature in the world has some type of DNA, whether it's an ant, or it's a fly, or a human being, or a lion, or a giraffe, or anything, a bird. Everything has a DNA. So he looked into the DNA of multiple species. He looked into giraffes, bats, sharks, humans, monkeys. I think it was something like maybe 21 or 22 different species, different types of beings. And he saw that the basic makeup of all species is exactly the same, meaning the DNA is exactly the same. If you guys ever saw a picture of a DNA on a computer, you see it's like these two squiggly lines going against each other, crisscrossing each other. Great. So he asks his computer, when he says the story, he's a very nice old man, and he says, I asked my computer, what happens if I take those two lines, because obviously it's important for those two lines to be together, because everyone has them. The foundation of all creatures have these two lines. So what happens if I take those two lines and I separate them? So the computer, you had a computer program that would talk to him, and the computer program says the subject will explode, meaning it cannot exist, will die. Okay. So having those two lines together is very important. Baruch Hashem. So next question is, Mr. Computer, what is keeping those two lines together? And the computer program responds, every so often, meaning every several ACTG, which is an acid, chumtza. Every so often, every several of these acids, there is a bridge made of sulfur, made of gafrit in Hebrew, that is connecting the two lines to each other. Okay. So the $1 million question is, how often is every so often? Is there a method? Is there a rhythm? Is there any type of intellect in this every so often? Or is it just random? Is it an explosion? Is the Big Bang Theory right? Is evolution right? Is there any method to this madness? Or is everything just random? So the computer program responds, every so often means every 10th acid, and after that there's every 5th, and after that it's every 6th, and after that it's every 5th. Then it goes back again, 10, 5, 6, 5, 10, 5, 6, 5, 10, 5, 6, 5. The Hebrew letters, the Hebrew alphabet, each letter has a numerical value. 10 is Yud, 5 is Hey, 6 is Vav, and Hey is 5 again. Which means that the name of Hashem, the Hebrew name of Hashem, not English, not Spanish, not Dutch, not German, not Arabic, not any other language in the world, the Hebrew name of Hashem, the Holy One, is inside your DNA, inside the DNA of every creature. Just like Hashem said in this verse, V'it'alachti betochechem, inside you. Inside you will find the name of God. So the key here is if someone is looking for God on the outside, oh, how come God doesn't give me any miracles, make me win the lotto? Oh, how come God doesn't find me a job? Oh, how come God doesn't find me a girlfriend? Oh, how come God doesn't do this, doesn't do this? Just look inside. You want God? Just look inside. That's right, it's everywhere. Physically. Not spiritually only, not theoretically, physically. And it's the Jewish God, not the other idols that people have created over time. So this is something that I think is extraordinary for everyone to know and to remind themselves, especially when there's emunah issues. Because Hashem said, I will be inside you and within you. This is just one tiny example that we could see it in a scientific way. So now after this, we start the tough part. We start the curses. Hashem says, V'im lo tishmeu. Okay, so we know all the things we get if we listen. Oh Hashem, we have a lot of great things. But what if we don't listen? What if I don't feel like it? What if I want to go to the beach? What if I want to eat lobster? What if I want to marry someone that's another guy? What if I want to give bar mitzvah to my dog like they do in reform shuls? What happens?
It's a lot.
What happens? Maybe Hashem talks about it. Let's see.
It's a big
Let's
business.
see. Yeah.
It's a big business with the dogs.
It's a big business. There's also a big Gehenom room waiting for those people. It's interesting. We'll see how many bar mitzvahs they'll do over there. Chilul Hashem they're causing. Listen, someone doesn't follow, don't follow. I have no problem. I love everyone. Someone who makes a joke, a mockery of Judaism, if he's an enemy of Hashem, he's an enemy of mine. V'im lo tishmeu li, v'lo ta'asu, et kol hamitzvot ha'ele. Wait a minute, hold on a second. Before we even go into the curses, hold on a second. Something interesting here. All of you know Hebrew, but I will say it in English just in case someone is watching doesn't know Hebrew. But if you will not listen to me, and will not perform all of these commandments. He didn't say some. He didn't say whatever makes sense to you. He didn't say if you like it or you don't like it.
All.
He said all. This is something very, very important for us to understand. Obviously, the Gemara goes into more details about this, but to describe this in a very, very important way, we have to understand. He mentioned this in this particular verse, and he mentions it obviously in several other places in the Torah. In order to battle people that we call chachmolog, people we call that the smart, the wise guys, the ones that make their own rules. No, you know what? Shabbat, it's not for me. I'm not going to work on Shabbat, but I'll drive. What's the big deal? I'll go to the beach. I'm not working. No, I'll answer my phone. I'll play on my computer all day. I'm not working and I'm not driving. I'll play on my computer all day on Shabbat. Listen, I'm not going to keep kosher, but I'm only going to eat chicken. So all of these people that make their own rules and still think that it's okay, this is one simple verse. It's not in some mystical way. It's not in some theoretical way. This is a very simple verse in the Torah itself. Hashem says, "Et kol mitzvotai." This is to battle those people that want to use their logic. He's telling you specifically here, do not use your logic. Some of my mitzvot will make sense to you and you will do them and you will benefit. Some of my mitzvot will not make sense to you and you still need to do them and you will benefit. But unlike the free choice that we think we have, we do not have free choice. What do I mean by that? Free choice that we think we have is the free choice that people have where they think they wake up in the morning, they do whatever they want, and everything is fine. Yes, you can do that. But that's not truly free choice. What free choice would really mean is that if you do whatever you want, there's no consequences. Meaning that if you come to work, you get paid. You don't come to work, you don't get paid. That's free choice. Okay, you come to work, I give you money. You don't come to work, I give you nothing. Judaism is not free choice. As a matter of fact, anything, being alive in the world is not free choice. Why? Because Hashem said so. Hashem said, you do not have free choice to the sense to the point of doing whatever you want. Because, yes, although you can do whatever you want, if you don't do what I want, there are consequences. Meaning, if you don't come to work, if you come to work, you get paid. You get paid a lot. If you don't come to work, I deduct money from your account. That's not free choice. That means that there's a consequence for not going to work. If you continue not coming to work, I keep deducting more and more from your account. And if you continue not coming to work, after I call you and give you signs, I call you on the phone, I leave a message, make different things happen in your life that remind you that Hashem is in control, whether it's a car accident, chas v'chalila, or a little bit of a cold, or relationship issues, all of these problems that we get, these are all signs. This is not just random stuff. So Hashem is giving you signs. It's just like the boss is calling, come to work. If after all of those signs, you still don't come to work, then forget about the money. We already ran out of money. You already lost all the money. Then I start taking your health. If you still don't listen, then I start taking more stuff from you. And more and more and more and more. And now it's not just monetary. It becomes physical. It becomes your surroundings. You become repulsed by the people around you. And life becomes hell. Here is just the beginning. That's not free choice. Again, like I said to you in the beginning, this is not me writing this or telling you this or translating this the way I want. This is exactly what it says here. This is reading from the Mefarshim, from Chazal. It's not an easy parasha, but this is something we need to know. Why? Because we need to realize that this is not just this is not a game life is not a game in a schoolyard. You have certain responsibilities. The good news is that if you do what he says, there's endless reward. Being a millionaire is nothing. It's being happy, billionaire, trillionaire, all of that stuff is not even 1 second in Olam Haba. All of the happiness of all of mankind throughout all of history is not the equivalent of 1 hour of a righteous person in Olam Haba, according to the Gemara. So, there's a lot of good. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of bad if you don't do. And it's important for people to know Chas v'chalila, I'm not judging anyone, I'm not righteous, and again, all of us have to do tshuva. But it's important for all of us to know, I'm doing this, I'm telling you guys what it says here, you do what you want. The key for me is that I need to teach myself, and coincidentally you guys happen to be in my house to learn with me. So, the point is for us to know what we need to do. Why? Because if we do it, there's a big reward, but if we don't do it, we need to know that, again, this is not exactly the free choice we thought we had when we were little kids. When we were little kids, we thought that if we don't show up to school, it's no big deal. But then after we stopped showing up 5 times, the principal called the house and said to our parents, if we don't show up, we fail and we have to get left back. This is a little more serious than that, but same concept. And it's important to know why, because anytime someone has a risk, they're a lot more careful. They're a lot more careful with what they do. So now Hashem goes through these curses. I'm not going to go through every single curse because, again, number one, I don't want to depress you, and number two, it'll take a long time. But I'll go over some of these things to give you guys an idea of what he says here. You'll hear it on Shabbat Be'ezrat Hashem, and hopefully we're a lot more educated by the time we get there. So now Hashem says to us that, if you don't listen to what I say here, there are certain punishments, and He's giving us levels of punishments. There's the first series, the second series of punishment. The first series meaning there's a bunch of health issues. Problems with the eyes, swelling, enemies will start going against us, will become miserable, meaning depressed. Things like that. People around us will start hating us, and so on. Second series is similar, but even more extreme. But then he starts talking about something that's very interesting because I saw it with my own eyes. So one thing it says is that you, when you work, you'll work in vain, which in vain in Hebrew is larik. Have you ever seen someone that works really, really hard? Obviously not keeping mitzvot, but maybe you didn't notice whether they're keeping or not. But sometimes you see some people working really hard, but they never have money. They're working 18 hours a day, moving, building, selling, whatever they're doing. It doesn't matter what they're doing. But they never have money. They're always behind on the bills. They always need to borrow $100. They're always, stressed out because I don't have any money, or I have too many bills and I'm not sure how to pay this, and they're always stressed out. They're always losing hair because they have so much stress. You ever notice some people like that? I notice a lot. I noticed myself at one point in my life like this. I noticed, quite frankly, most people that I know are like this. People work hard, night and day. We don't have a problem with hard work. We're, Baruch Hashem, Jews know how to work hard. But sometimes you see the common problem is that they work really hard, but they don't have any money. And even when they have some money, it's not like they're not satisfied with it. And it's just one of those things where it's like they're constantly grinding water. Tochen mayim. Tochen mayim, it's a funny comparison because no matter how much you grind water, it's still going to be water. This is actually one of the punishments. That you work really, really hard, but you're still not going to succeed. And that's why sometimes you see one guy working really, really hard. He's still, basic level employee. Another guy working less. But for some reason, Hashem gave him the blessing. Guy's making $1 million a year. He's not smarter than him. He's not a harder worker. He's not nothing. You can't tell the difference between those two people. If anything, this guy is better. But for some reason, he makes $50,000, the other guy makes $1 million. Drives you crazy sometimes. Doesn't make any sense. One of the reasons, I'm not going to say that I know the cheshbonot of Shamayim, one of the reasons is right here in this verse. Hashem says, one of the curses is for the person to work in vain. Meaning, regardless of how much they're going to work, they're still not going to have. That's one of the curses. I'm trying to find the ones that are relevant to us, that you start paying attention to the people around you. Because sometimes what happens is that when you're in the deep part of not such a good place, one of the problems, one of the punishments actually, is that Hashem makes it even harder for you to see Hashem. So you would think that the more difficult times I have, the easier it's going to be for me to see Hashem, to see that Hashem is controlling everything. It's actually the opposite. The more someone goes against Hashem, the bigger the disconnection is between him and Hashem, and the more difficult it will become for him or her to see that Hashem is in control of everything. So instead of them doing tshuva, because listen, I lost my car, I lost my money, I lost my wife, I lost my this, chas v'chalila, no aleinu, but point I'm trying to tell you, someone lost everything, and still going in his wicked way, still going against Hashem, still an enemy of Hashem, still mechalel Shabbat, still eating pork, still doing whatever he's doing, and sees nothing wrong with it. He just thinks it's bad luck. So it's not that that person is stupid. It's the evil that he's committing against Hashem is actually causing him to be even more blind as more stuff is happening to him. The next thing is that Hashem says, this is the second level, your strength will be spent in vain. V'tam lari kochachem, v'lo titen artechem et yevula v'etz haaretz lo yiten priyo. Your strength will be spent in vain, your land will not give its produce, and the tree of the land will not give its fruit. What does it mean, your strength will be spent in vain? We just talked about working in vain, that you work and you're still not succeeding.
You're not making money.
So what does it mean? Your strength will be, okay, you're not saying, it's not the same thing. You already told us we're working in vain, we're working, we're not getting money. Already told us this. So he's saying something else now. He's saying your strength will be spent in vain. What he's saying here, that even if you have money and you're making money, all of that money will be spent for things that you don't want. Lawsuits, chas v'chalila, medical expenses, all the things you don't want to spend money on. You made $1 million, you want to buy a boat, you want to buy a car, you want to go on vacation, you want to, I don't know, house, whatever people want to buy, right? That's what you want to do. That's where you made all the money, right? But Hashem is telling you, go against me. That $1 million, maybe I'll still give it to you. But that entire $1 million, and maybe even more, will go to lawsuits, bills, legal, all types of disasters, medical, and everything else. So even when I give you strength, it's still not good for you. It's actually even worse for you. All of the energy that you're going to have will just be spent fighting all of these things. It's a pretty bad thing. It's disaster. Also something we saw. And it's very, very tough for people to deal with this. Very, very tough. So, again, none of these things are easy. I'm just trying to pick the ones that are easy to understand, at least. Another one is in the third series, if you behave casually with me. So he's constantly saying, if you behave casually with me. What he means in as far as if you behave casually with me, in Hebrew it's Ve'im tilchu imi keri ve'lo tovu lishmoa. So keri means casually. What does it mean casually? If you look at my mitzvot, like it's not really such a big deal if I follow, if I don't follow. It's not a big deal if I pay attention if my tefillin's over here or it's over here in the right place. It's not really such a big deal. Relax, listen, me and Hashem, we're like this, no worries. Okay, so I didn't eat kosher today, tomorrow I'll eat kosher. What's the big deal? Why are you so uptight? Take it, you're treating like Hashem, like he's one of your buddies from the schoolyard. So Hashem says, and every one of the curses, by the way, every one of them, starts, if you behave casually with me. If you behave casually with me. Every single one of them starts like this.
30 of them.
So he's telling you, if you behave casually with me, I will incite the wildlife of the field against you.
Wow.
So the wildlife, this in the Gemara, it talks about someone's a mechalel Shabbat. It is one of the punishments is death in this world, death next world, and loss of olam haba. But death in this world, they describe it as being run over by an animal. Obviously, we don't live in Africa or in the jungle, so in this generation, they refer to car accidents. So someone has a car accident, and chas v'chalila, and Be'ezrat Hashem, nothing happens to them. It's a very clear sign.
It's a wake-up call.
It's a very clear sign. What does it mean? This is something very important. I want you guys to pay attention to this. Stop everything you're doing. Pay attention to this. It's probably the most important part of the entire shiur. Someone that has such a thing had a gzar din mavet in Shamayim. Meaning there was a judge said death to that person. Supposed to die. Why did they die? Why didn't they die? Why, Hashem made a mistake? Forgot? Why did they die? Chazal explains to us that Hashem is righteous. Hashem is not like us in any way. No one will ever get a punishment, even an ounce of a punishment, that they do not deserve. Which means that if that person that had the decree of death on that person, someone else will suffer from it, right? Not just him. Chas v'chalila, family, friends, even a distant friend he knew at 5th grade. He hasn't talked to him in 30 years. That person will find out. If that person that he hasn't seen in 30 years, that will eventually find out, does not deserve to find out such bad news, that by itself can save that person from gzar din mavet. That's why they say it's very, very good to make friends with tzaddikim. So make some friends with tzaddikim. I'm friends with you guys, Baruch Hashem, so I have friends that are tzaddikim. You guys need to make friends with tzaddikim now. But b'rtzinut, seriously, the key is here, what we learn from here is that no one gets something they do not deserve. Anything we get, we deserve. Anything. No one says, oh, bad luck. Oh, I don't have any luck. Oh, why me? Why me? Why is Hashem picking on me? So this is something that we have to understand. Someone that got into chas v'chalila, some type of accident, medical, all of those things, we don't even need to mention them. They have to know there was a decree in Shamayim for their death. They were supposed to die. But someone in their life, which they'll only know once they get to Shamayim eventually, hopefully many, many years after they do tshuva, saved their life at that point. Without even knowing, without intending. Could be your wife, could be your husband, could be your friend, could be your parents, could be somebody. Somebody is righteous enough to deserve not for you to die. But they don't deserve it forever. They've saved you once, twice. There's no such thing as a tzaddik that never made a sin. It's 4 in history, but in general. So, for that, we need to know if those things are happening, those are very, very, very serious signs. Very serious signs. And those signs are the ones that are, how do you say it? I guess like a last call type of thing. Sometimes you get a few last calls because the bartender is very generous, but usually you get kicked out. This Parashot also has the same thing in regards to the land that we talked about before. Hashem says one of the punishments will be on the land. V'ashimoti et mikdeshechem v'lo ariach bereach nichochem v'ashimoti ani et haaretz v'shamemu alea oivechem ayoshvim ba. In so many words, so actually saying here in verse 26-32, it says, I will make the land desolate, and your foes who dwell upon it will be desolate. So he's saying not only will the land die, but even your foes, even your enemies that took over the land, they're also not going to be able to fix it. Like we talked about before. It actually says also some of the things we talked about before. Then the land will be appeased for its sabbaticals. So all the shemitah that you didn't keep, the land is going to start keeping now. Then the land will be appeased for its sabbaticals during all the years of its desolation, while you are in the land of your foes. So the sinners will be in the land of the enemies, and the land is going to be getting a break from everyone. Then the land will rest, and it will be appeased for its sabbaticals. All the years of its desolation, it will rest, whatever it did not rest during your sabbaticals when you dwelled upon her. So that's another interesting thing as far as proof, actually, about Torah. So I know that some of this stuff is very tough to hear, but also there's something we need to know that Shlomo HaMelech said in Proverbs Mishle. Shlomo HaMelech was given was not only righteous enough to get the blessing of building the first Bet Mikdash, which throughout his entire tenure he was never had a war. But Shlomo HaMelech was also the smartest man that ever lived. And Shlomo HaMelech wrote Sefer Mishle, and he says here, Musar Adonai beni al timas v'al takotz b'tochachto. He says, my child, do not despise Hashem's discipline, and do not despise His reproof. So he's telling you here, Shlomo HaMelech is telling you, when Hashem is telling you some things that are hard to hear, like this parasha, like the stuff that no one here wants to hear, and no one was watching this. I don't know if this parasha is going to be the most popular video we make, but when Hashem is telling you this stuff, don't hate it. Don't hate the punishments. Don't hate the tough words. Why? Ki et asher ye'av Adonai yochiach uke'av et ben yirtzeh. For Hashem admonishes, meaning Hashem is admonishing, disciplines the one He loves, and like a father, He mollifies the child. So if a father really likes a child, he really loves his child, he has a little boy, and his boy asks for something, he wants to give it to his son, right? Okay, but what if the son says, Tomel, Abba, I wanna run in the middle of the street with my friends, in the middle of the highway. What do you think?
Not a good idea.
No, Tom, maybe for your kid, maybe your kid's not allowed, but his kid, was your kid allowed? In the highway? What about the other Tomel number 2? Liad says, Abba, after school today, I want to run on the highway on 441. What do you think? I'm asking you. Maybe you're different. Nissan says no. Tomer number 1 Destin said no. Tomer number 2 maybe has a different answer. I don't know. So wait, so does that make you a bad father? Your son asked for something. You said no. Does that make you a bad father?
You're going to let him do something that's going to hurt him.
That's the point. So Hashem says, I'm giving you all of these things to teach you something. That's what Shlomo HaMelech over here says. Don't hate the tough language that Hashem is using in this parasha. Don't hate all the punishments that Hashem is telling you may get if you don't follow what He says. Don't hate them. It's for you. It's for your own benefit. I don't want you to run in the middle of the street with all the goyim and eat pork and destroy your neshama. I don't want you to read the newspaper. I want you to read the Torah. I don't want you to watch TV. I want you to listen to Al-Tzah. It's for your own good. Why? Because the life that you have here is a kipozdo. It's like a hallway, corridor. Short life. The real life is very, very long. You have to prepare for that really long life, because what you do in this world will determine what you have in the next world. And the next world is eternal. Do you want eternal good? Or you want eternal punishment? So don't hate so much the tough language Oh, he's so kitzoni, he's tough, he's this, he's that. No, this is what it says, what Hashem says. Don't hate it.
For our own good.
Smartest man of all time, Shlomo Melech, is telling us this. Praiseworthy is a person who has found wisdom, a person who can derive understanding from it, for its commerce is better than the commerce of silver, and its produce is better than fine gold. It is more precious than pearls, and all your desires cannot compare to it. Length of days is at its right, at its left. Wealth and honor. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its pathways are peace. He's talking about the Torah. It is a tree of life to those who grasp it, and its supporters are praiseworthy. So now he's telling you that if you want to follow Hashem, you have to learn Torah. Those that support Torah are praiseworthy. Those that learn it are even have more benefit. More benefit than pearls, more benefit than gold, silver. More benefit than the world can ever give you in this world. Why? Because you're buying yourself a Olam Haba. And someone that wants to follow the Hashem's Torah has to learn Torah every day. Every day. Can't be once a week. Unfortunately, as hard as we try, as much as we try to learn to prepare for this shiur, unfortunately, even if I was Gdol Ador, still wouldn't be enough. One day a week's not enough. That's what we always remind you guys. Something every day. 15 minutes a day, half hour a day, an hour a day, whatever you can do. 5 minutes. Some type of Torah has to be inside you every day. If I told you, listen, you have to pick. Either you learn Torah every day or you stop breathing once a week. You're not going to stop breathing once a week. Torah is even more important than breath. That's the key. So you have to understand that this stuff is not it's not the most fun topic, but it's the most important. And then you have another thing for some people in the world have this actually was a personal proof to someone I know. This week we always talk about how each parasha is relevant to us personally. If you learn the parasha enough, you will find a personal message in the parasha at the time you're learning it that year. And this week we actually, I witnessed it live, someone finding their message in the Torah. This week. And someone asked me, is there a verse in the Torah that talks about the oral Torah? You know, because we have the written Torah, which is Chamshat Torah. We have the 5 books of Moses. That's the written Torah. No one has a problem with the written Torah. Even non-Jews. Some people don't believe in anything. It's a different story. It's a different battle. We're talking about religious people, whether they're Muslims or they're Christians, Catholics, or Jews, even the sects of Jews, whether conservative, reform, Orthodox. Everyone says this book exists. This book is real. This book is from God. Whether they follow it or not is a different story. Point is, no one says this is not a divine book. Said that. The books that everyone has a problem with is the oral Torah. Torah Be'al Peh. The oral Torah is the Gemara, the Mishnah, the Zohar, and many, many other things that discuss the blessings, the mitzvot. It's pretty much Judaism. If we ever had to give up one of the Torahs, you guys have probably heard from Rabbi Mizrahi's lectures, Chas v'chalil, if we ever had to give up one of the Torahs, we would have to give up the written Torah, not the oral Torah. Why? Because the oral Torah is really truly Judaism, not the written Torah. So now, the question is, does God talk about the oral Torah somewhere? Because we know about the written Torah, because He talks about it. Does God talk about the oral Torah? And that's what someone asked me this week. So He does. And He actually does in this parasha. It's a chapter 26, verse 46. אלה החוקים והמשפטים והתורות אשר נתן אדוני בינו ובין בני ישראל בהר סיני ביד משה. So it's saying, these are the decrees the ordinances and the teachings that Hashem gave between himself and the children of Israel at Mount Sinai through Moses. If you noticed, all of the words being used are plural. He's not saying Torah, like he says most of the time. He says Torot. Torot in the Hebrew language is more than one. So Ele HaChukim VaMishpatim VaTorot. So if he only gave us just the written Torah, then I would say, then he gave us the Torah, which he says in many other places in the Torah. But here he specifically talks about Torot, more than one. It's in a few places in the Torah. This is one. This happens to be in this week's Parashot. So, for anyone who does not know where it is, does not believe in the oral Torah, it's generally out of ignorance. The written Torah talks about the oral Torah, and this one particular verse in this week's Parashah is a place that it talks about it. So this is again another really interesting thing. Now we only have a little bit of time. We'll finish. One thing that we need to understand about Torah is not something that we. It's not something natural. It's not something that has a traditional impact on us, like learning science or learning math or learning any other language. Torah has a spiritual effect on us as well as a physical effect on us. There was someone by the name of Rabbi Ravin that lived at the time, over the last 100 years. He was a major genius. He actually met with Einstein one time. It's a true story. You can look it up on the internet. And Einstein met with him, and he started, he heard about this rabbi, and the rabbi heard about Einstein. He's like, oh, listen, there's a Jew that's very smart in science. The whole world's making a big deal out of him. Rabbi, you should meet him. And Rabbi said, okay. And Einstein took the meeting. After a short period of time, Einstein came out of the room, and he famously said that, I don't understand how it's possible, but everything that I spent my whole life learning, he already knew in a matter of a few minutes. He told me everything that it took me 20 years to learn. If you take his brain, you can make two Einsteins. And that's the genius of the Torah. So they told this to the rabbi, and the rabbi said, what, if he thought that I know a lot about his shtuyot, his nonsense? If he thought that I know a lot about his nonsense, he should come learn Torah with me. Then I'll show him what I really know. This rabbi worked so hard on learning Torah that they say that the veins in his head started coming out where it became dangerous to give him a haircut. His brain was I guess going on overdrive or something. But it literally made veins come out of his head where it became very dangerous to give him a haircut. The reason why I think of this story is because it reminds me of the story that I heard today that shows us that the Torah, again, is not only spiritual but also physical. There's a famous story that happened about 2 or 3 years ago in Israel. Some years ago before that, one of the poor soldiers that was a victim to the terrorists, the Arabs over there, and one of their bombs, got hit by one of their bombs. And these people are so horrible that even in their bombs they put screws and nails and glass and different things. They want their bombs not only to explode like a regular bomb, but they want to impact the most amount of people. Shows you the root of evil exists there. So unfortunately this poor soldier was a victim to one of these bombs and got injured by it, got parts of metal and nails and screws and all over his body. They removed everything, but there was one problem. There was one left. There was one nail stuck in his head, and it was impacting his brain. When they tried to do a surgery, they couldn't do it. They said that if we take it out, you're probably going to die. So you have to live with this nail in your head. Not exactly the ideal way of living, but being alive is a plus. Now, unlike many people, this man was very smart, and he realized that Hashem gave him a second chance. And he took advantage of that second chance. He saw that that sign was enough of a sign. And he did tshuva. He became an avrech. Started learning Torah. But it takes time. It takes time to learn. It takes time to become big. It's not something you learn overnight. The Torah is not something like where if you learn 1 year, you have 1 year of knowledge. If you learn 2 years, you have 2 years of knowledge. It's all based on effort. If your potential is a 10, but you're only working up to a 5, then you may get only 1 year for 1 year. You may even get less. But if your potential is 10 and you're using 10, you can learn what people learn in 20 years in 1 year. It's all about your effort. And there's several verses in the Torah and the Tanakh talk about how God gifts you the Torah. He gives you the Torah, meaning that you will learn some things based on your learning, but the insights and knowledge and chidushim that you will able to understand from the same thing that everybody else read will be night and day difference. And that's why they say that you can learn 1 page in a Tanakh, 1 page in a Gemara your entire life if you want, and still get a chidush every single time. And your level of understanding will continue to improve. There's to segue off of this story for a second. There was one guy, I believe it's in the Gemara, but I'm not sure. But I heard the story. It's a very good story. It's one guy that found out from his doctors that he's going blind. He has a disease and he's going to go blind. And he says, okay, well, if I go blind, I'm not going to be able to learn Torah anymore. Can you help me? And he says, yeah, if you have a surgery, 50-50 shot. I don't think it's a Gemara. I think it's just, I heard it from a rabbi. But anyway, 50-50 shot. If it works, you have your vision. If it doesn't work, I'm sorry, you'll be blind. So the guy says, okay, wait, hold on. Can't take that risk. I need to learn some Torah first. So he figured, you know what? I'm going to take 2 masechtot, 2 tractates of Gemara. I'm learn them by heart. So I know that if in case I go blind, at least I know something. I'm going to keep repeating the same Gemara for the rest of my life. So at least I have two tractates of the Gemara that I'm going to know for the rest of my life, and I'll keep learning it over and over and over again. I'll keep learning new things. So at least I don't have nothing. So he learned, next few months, learned 2 tractates by heart. Came back to the doctor, said, okay, doctor, I'm ready for the surgery. They did some tests. He said, no, it's too late. You're going to go blind shortly. In a few months, you're going to go blind. And sure enough, he went blind. But for the rest of his life, he continued repeating those 2 tractates of Gemara, those 2 masechtot of Gemara, every day. On his grave, he told in his will, and he told his children, I don't want you to write any blessings on me. I just want you to write my name, studied this and these 2 Gemaras 4,000 times. And that's what they wrote on his grave. So going back to the poor soldier that had a nail in his head, and we'll finish up here. The soldiers tried really hard. But there was this one particular rabbi that he was trying to learn from that he just could not understand what he says. Just couldn't do it. You know, sometimes you're just not at that level. The guy's talking here and you're here. Just can't get there. And it would drive him crazy. And he always tried to prepare. He always tried to understand him. He tried everything he can. Just could not understand him. So one day he decided, he goes, okay, I've had enough. I'm going to go ask the rabbi, what is he going to teach tomorrow? I'm going to learn it before he teaches it. So at least I understand what's going on. So he goes to the rabbi and he says, Kvod Harav, what are you going to teach tomorrow in the lecture? And he says, we're going to learn about the Rashbam. Rashbam and the topics that he was teaching. Very, very difficult. He says, okay, fine. I'm going to learn all night and I'm not going to give up until I know everything he's going to learn. So all night he's learning in the kollel, non-stop, not giving up. And all of a sudden he hears screaming, hey, what happened? What happened? So he takes up his attention off of the book. He looks around and nothing happened. And the guy is running towards him. What happened? What happened? What happened? He's like, what? What happened? What do you want? What happened? He goes, why is there blood everywhere? He goes, what blood? And he just notices, for the first time, there's blood everywhere. All over his face. And he was so deep into the book that he didn't realize that the strength of the brain power that he was using made the nail come out of his head. All the way to the point that it was just like something like almost like a thing just hanging off, and he just took it out like you take a hair out. So much so that it wasn't only publicized in the religious community, but it was actually publicized in the scientific magazines in Israel. They don't know how it's possible for him not to die and the nail come out. So Torah is something beyond what we understand. And the only way we could truly do what Hashem says, live a wonderful life, is just by following this first verse of the Parashot. Im Bechukotai telechu, ve'et mitzvotai tishmeru, ve'asitim otam. That's it. All you got to do is that. Learn some Torah, figure out what the mitzvot are, do them. You'll have osher ve'osher, simcha, parnasa, atzlacha, zivug, whatever you need in life, Hashem will give you. And Be'ezrat Hashem, Hashem will give all of you that.
And Mazal Tov on your article.
Baruch Hashem. And Be'ezrat Hashem will continue getting stronger, learning more Torah together, getting closer to Hashem, doing what He wants. תעשה את רצונו רצונך, והוא יעשה את רצונך רצונו.
חזק וברוך.